everybody, and welcome back to another show. Now, this time I have got Di Martin on, and we are talking about breeding. It's a very much a hot topic at the moment, isn't it? I can't actually believe the timing of this. It's absolutely incredible because there's so much talk about puppies at the moment with what's going on with the BBC, which we'll go into in a bit. But firstly, Di, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi there everyone. Okay, just a little bit of background about myself. I started training dogs when I was about 15. I attended the local dog training club with my first dog, who was a German Shepherd called Ben. And I was totally inspired by the top class who did this sport called competitive obedience. So by 17, I learned to drive and I was off every weekend to show to learn how to train. And luckily, learned from some of the top trainers in the sport. So I've been involved in the sport for about 33 years, competed with 7 dogs and achieved my aim of winning pups in 2011. Alongside that, I was a plant scientist for 17 years, which naturally made me more interested in the science behind training. So I attended many conferences and seminars to improve my knowledge on the behaviour side of things. And in industry, I developed quite good management and people training skills to work in industry. So this, combined with my knowledge of dogs, eventually led me to set up Gypsy Hill Dog Trading in 2006. So the business provides a range of services, one-to-one training, weekly classes, as well as targeted classes. We do recall classes, behaviour consults, and I personally do a lot of sports coaching across the UK and across Europe. My passion really is kind of helping people get it right from the start. And research has kind of proven that a high percentage of dogs end up in rescue only because people have got a kind of lack of knowledge in order to kind of raise their puppy well. So when I'm training people, I always say I would love to be able to insert a memory chip in my head and transfer the information to people to give them all the skills they need. And as this technology isn't available yet, I developed the next best thing. So the last kind of year and a half of my life, I spent developing an online course which provides people with the bigger picture and helps them understand how their dog thinks, feels and learns. If every dog owner watched this, I'm pretty sure we'd end up with a lot less dogs in rescue, which is one of my main passions, is trying to help people get it right from the start.
Fantastic. I mean, that is a massive data blast, Diane. So I just want to sit and chunk that down a bit, just so that people can digest it, because it's huge. And it's really important that people understand your background as well, because, this is what's made you the good breeder that you are. Your background, so you've basically been in dogs your entire life. You've got a scientific background. You've also done dog training your entire life. You've been highly successful at it. And you've applied your knowledge of science to try and make you able to really justify everything and understand why you've learned everything as well, which is really, really quite impressive. So well done. And then obviously, you've put all your knowledge and experience into trying to make sure, this is the big thing I want to make sure that everybody definitely hears, into not making dogs that are going to need to go into rescue. And that's huge. That's so important because, of course, as I said earlier, everybody, we're of course pro rescue. This isn't about rescue, rescue versus puppies. This is totally about getting good puppies right from the start, so they don't end up having to go into rescue. And if you can achieve that, then oh my goodness. I mean, there's a million reasons why dogs go into rescue. So we're not talking about all those scenarios, but the ones where it's because somebody can't cope with their puppy because they've not been raised right. That squashes it out if you've got good breeding right from the start.
Yeah, I think you've got the 2 elements really. You've got the good breeding and making sure that you've raised the puppy to be as confident as you can, and there's a lot of new dog owners out there, and it's giving them the knowledge. A lot of people kind of base their experience of dogs, of having family dogs and things like that, and what they don't do is update their knowledge there. And there's research on that, and that is the top reason that people just haven't updated their knowledge. And there's so much more to training now.
Yeah, and that was a big thing that I was going to mention, definitely, is because there's probably not trying to disrespect anyone at all, but at the end of the day, updating is so important. Science moves forward, everything moves forward, and you might have been breeding for 20 years, but that doesn't necessarily make you the best. You might be, but if you don't update your knowledge and move forwards all the time, like in veterinary, we are always updating, and things we did 20 years ago are not the things that we do today. And sometimes you look back and you think, oh God, I can't even believe we did that, but that's what you did back then. And you didn't have any different knowledge back then, but now we do. And the important and, you know, ethical thing to do is to make sure that you update and move forward with that. So I really want to make sure that you know, everybody who's watching, thank you so much for joining us, and please do make sure that you ask questions and get involved, because this is your opportunity to find out about being a breeder, being a good breeder. You know, is this right for you, and all that sort of thing. Because in the past few weeks, you know, there's been an awful lot of talk in the veterinary world about puppies, and you know, how much, you know, it shocks me. But basically, the price of puppies has gone through the roof and doubled. And then I've heard comments that have been like, oh, it's okay because I'll just have a litter of puppies and then I'll make that money back. And it really is not that simple at all. And I think you really have to have your eyes open if you're, you know, you're going to go into breeding, because it is actually a really big thing. And that was what I wanted to sort of bring here. And then obviously that takes us off onto the hot topic of the last 2 days that Di has managed to miss in her little bubble at the moment. That the BBC have obviously had this idea that they were going to do a show called Will My Puppies Make Me Rich? Which, wow, I think that any breeder would probably say certainly that first set aren't going to do anything close to that and probably put you in the red. But anyway, so I just have loads of questions, Di, and I really wanted to get you talking. So, what's it like being a breeder?
I can tell you now, it's hard work, it's time consuming, it's a big responsibility. So I think the decision to breed your dog really shouldn't be taken lightly. It really shouldn't.
Exactly, and it's got to be passion, not money, right?
It definitely has. I mean, if you know, you've got the worry around your bitch as well, and whether, you know, anything's going to happen, you know, and that's kind of key for me. And, you know, I'm sure it'll come out later in some of the questions, but there's a lot of pre-work to it. There's a lot of work involved once you've got the litter. And it's understanding a lot of the kind of periods that the puppy's going through and what you've got to do in that period. So it more or less becomes a full-time job.
And how are you
trying to give up my day job to raise a litter of puppies? So that's 8 weeks where I'm not doing my proper day job.
And it's exactly the same as like babies, isn't it? You know, you basically given up your work to be able to raise these puppies properly. And how much sleep are you getting at the moment with your current litter?
My current litter, so they're 12 days old, and I'm getting 4.5 hours sleep per night, and I've had that for the last 12 days. So I'm a little bit on the, you know, jet lag kind of at the minute. And that's because I had one born premature. He was really kind of, you know, 10 days probably earlier than the rest. You know, you could just tell from his whole body and his joints and where the shape of him was. And so, of course, obviously the suckling ability wasn't great. So it's taken an awful lot of nurturing him. And he's getting there now, bless him.
Bless him. Well done. And we'll definitely get back into that conversation as well. But I also wanted to know, like, what are the costs of being a breeder? You know, what sort of things do you have to buy?
Well, firstly, I suppose you've got all the health tests. Now that depends on the breed. So for the collies, I've got about 7 different kind of health tests that I do that needs to be sent off. So that's a blood test, and they're sent off to the labs. I've then got to do hip and elbow scoring. You know, you do want to check, you know, ideally when I'm, you know, breeding, I want a good conformation, I want good temperament. You know, you've got to test the health of the dog because you're trying to carry the kind of good genes forward. So you're trying to at least improve on what you've got, but you need good starting material. You know, you've got the potential costs around a stud dog. You know, if you're trying to improve, you've got to look at the stud dog, you know, all the same things, health, conformation, temperament, and the traits and the qualities seen in his offspring. So there's a lot of research and time to spend on that as well. Now, I might find the ideal dog in Switzerland. Now, if I do, I've got all the travelling costs and the associated journey as well as the stud fees. So, you know, when I'm looking to improve, so, you know, my bitch at the minute, I would say, has got a very good front end. The back end could probably do with a little bit of improvement. There's nothing wrong with it, but if I wanted to improve something, it would be to kind of strengthen the back end. She's slightly over-angulated. So it's making sure that you know about your dog, you understand some of those things. So lots and lots of kind of pre-work into that, and then getting the time in right. So I might be taking my bitch for blood tests to check progesterone levels. So particularly if it's the first kind of litter, because they can actually ovulate anywhere between day 11 and say day 16. some bitches even later than that, I do. So you've got to get the right day for that mating, particularly if you're travelling somewhere, you know, if you're travelling to Scotland to get the right stud dog, you want to make sure you've got the right day. You're going to probably do 2 matings, maybe 24, 48 hours, probably 48 hours apart. So you've got to be prepared to stay somewhere if the dog's not local. So there's lots and lots of costs before you even, you know, before the bitch is even pregnant.
And those costs that you've discussed there, I definitely want to say well done for talking about the health of the dog, because that is such a huge subject. And obviously we need to make sure that, you know, regardless of what your breed is, there are health implications, and you've got to make sure that you get that right. And so always look into what your problems are with your breed, and be really ethical about your choices. But also, really big point there, it's been well recognised that the gene pool in the UK, we're only a tiny island, so it's not unreasonable that you have to go abroad to find, you know, more, you know, to increase the gene pool, particularly if you've got a breed that is not very you know, hugely established in the UK, because then you've got even less stud dogs and bitches around. So that's really, really important. But also, you've only touched on the medical side of things. You haven't even discussed all the paraphernalia. So, you know, I mean, you know, give us a quick touch base on the, you know, the whelping area. And
whelping box, you know, that can be hugely expensive if you're getting a good one that's kind of reusable. So mine was something about like £450. You've got heat lamps. I prefer to use heat lamps because then the bitch can get away from the heat, and also the puppies can get away from the heat. You can get heat pads, but then the heat's kind of everywhere. So I tend to go for heat lamps. You've got puppy pens, there's maybe indoors and outdoors, if you're giving them kind of more room to run around as they grow. I like to call it puppy gym equipment, so lots of kind of dangling things, moving things, you know, all different things that you're going to expose them to. So anti-slip flooring all around the house, you need good traction. You've got to remember, you know, their bones are so soft. You know, a lot of people used to raise their puppies maybe using newspaper as to go to the toilet on. Well, that's really, really slidey for them. So you just see their little limbs kind of sliding out, and you're already potentially kind of causing damage. So thinking about your whole setup, so that you're, you know, doing the best you can for the puppies. And you've got, you know, baby milk and bottles just in case you needed it. I needed it straight away from day one, so it's being prepared. You know, all the food, the toys, just lots and lots of equipment. I actually have 4 sheds down the side of my house, and it's all full of dog equipment.
exactly.
Give them different things to do and give them that variety and novelty.
And then also, like you've touched on there, you can't just assume that your puppies are probably going to be fine. They probably will be, but you can't just assume that. You've got to be ready, because at 3 a.m, you can't just go out, especially if it's a Saturday night and everything's closed. You're not going to get hold of anything till Monday morning, and you can't just think, oh well, you know, if anything goes wrong, then I'll go buy the bottles. You've just got to have them on hand just in case.
Yeah, and I suppose the big one is then the big, you know, cost. If they do start going, you know, labour at 3:30 in the morning, I would say I've only weighed about 8 litres to keep my line going, but I would say I've been in the vets with 3 of those, and it's certainly been out of hours costs.
Yeah, it's yes, because it always happens at night. I mean, are you prepared to, like, I mean, you might not even know this number off the top of your head, but do you think you could like estimate what the cost is for somebody who's thinking about breeding right now, how much they think that they should have in the bank to be able to sort of pull off their first ever breeding? Because when you do your first lot, you haven't got any of the stuff at all. You know, at least second lot, you've got something.
Yeah, I would say you've got at least £1,000 worth of kind of equipment, whelping box and all those kind of things. You probably need, probably maybe like £1,500 up front for all the tests and the research and everything that you need to do. And then I would always have a spare, you know, £1,500 should they need a C-section or anything like that. You know, out of hours costs. And, you know, if you've got a puppy, like, if you haven't got the experience, you know, I can tube feed puppies, and I know how to kind of bottle feed them. But if you haven't got that experience and you've got an ill puppy, you know, that could end up kind of in the vets overnight for 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, exactly. And that's definitely thousands. Yeah. So really, you need to make sure there's about £3,000 in the bank before you enter into this, because of your paraphernalia and your medical costs of getting all organised. And that's hoping that it all goes right. So yeah, that's a big thing to think about. So what do you need to do to ensure that you've got well-rounded puppies that are well adjusted and confident, ready for their new home?
Oh, that's a big question, isn't it?
I know it's a big one.
There's lots and lots to it. So I would
try and break it into chunks so that we can.
I think you need a really good understanding of a puppy's developmental needs. So there's many stages that they go through, which will require you to do different activities. So first of all, you've maybe got the neonatal period that's going to last kind of 14 days, where you're going to start early neurological stimulation kind of exercises with them. You've got the transitionary period when the eyes and ears are open. And that's the point where breeders will begin to give the puppies more room in a noisier environment. You're working on kind of the startle recovery responses. And then once you hit kind of 3 weeks, you're into that critical socialization period. And that really lasts from 3 to 12 weeks. And as a breeder, you're responsible from 3 to 8 weeks. Okay, so not only have you got to do the best job that you can do, you've got to transfer all of that information to people to do the best job that they can do as well. So
let me sorry, I was just going to interrupt you there just to put some perspective out for people. This is really the equivalent of when you have a baby, you take your baby off to all these classes for exactly that. You do baby sensory and you do baby this, that and the other, and it's all for making sure that their sensory skills are as well developed as possible, and then that leads on to their behavioral skills being as good as possible, and then understanding you and communicating. And it all seems a bit like, oh, of course you don't need to do that, of course puppies can develop on their own, but actually when you have babies you do all those things. So it's exactly the same thing, isn't it? You're making
that stages, isn't there, in the brain development? And I'm pretty sure it's the same with kids. So, you've got that kind of 3 to 12 week period. There's maybe a tapering effect to 16 weeks. But then that stage of their brain development stops. So really, what you've created in that first 16 weeks is so important for the rest of the dog's life. And it's when they're deciding what's safe and what's not so safe. So it's really important that they get quality experiences as well as quantity.
Yeah, definitely. And that does make the world of difference, because I mean, again, as I keep taking it back to people, just so that you can sort of just put your own sort of experiences in there as well. And it's exactly the same as when you're raising children and you're trying to teach them who are safe people, who are not safe people, who you can trust to go to, who you stay away from. It's all those exact same skills, but you're trying to do it in a dog fashion and not get it wrong, because once you instill the wrong thought, loads of people have got kids that won't eat their greens or whatever, if they've managed to instill it in the wrong way, then that's it, and that becomes a really big issue to try and deal with. And that's when we're all down the children's centre asking for help from the social workers or whatever, like, oh no, I broke up a child.
Months and months and months and months and sometimes years to fix, particularly in dogs as it does in people.
Definitely. So there's an awful lot there to think about. Well done. So the next thing I wanted to ask was, puppies can be destructive, of course. So what's the most expensive and frustrating thing that you've had that's been destroyed by your puppies?
Well, I probably don't get frustrated, but probably the one, I would say in the first 6 litters that I have, because they need changes of environment. So, I have them initially in my bedroom, and then when they're about kind of 3 weeks old, they come down to the lounge, and I want to slowly introduce them to other rooms in the house. So you've got those environmental changes. So eventually they end up running all around the house. And my stair gate is on the 2nd stair. So I think over 3 litters, I managed to get a big hole in the carpet on the 1st step. But that's probably about it. And that's because I'm very, very good at puppy proofing my house.
Excellent.
When you've got kind of a litter of 6, 7, 8 puppies around, you can't have the odd wire or the internet cable kind of, available for them to chew. So you really do need to do a good job of puppy proofing.
Absolutely. And again, it comes back exactly back to the babies. You have a child, and then the first thing you do go around baby proofing your house. And it's exactly the same with puppies. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't necessarily think about it, which I understand. I understand you just don't necessarily click, but it's something that has to be thought about. And the fact that you've gone around and done all the puppy proofing and then still ended up with damage is very telling, because the point is you can't puppy proof everything. And I must admit, I shared something the other day because it did make me laugh, because I'm a nurse, so I've seen it 100 times. And it was a rabbit one, and it was just someone saying, "That's my phone charger," and then there was a rabbit saying, "It's spicy hay," and then I just laughed because I was like, yeah, that's you know, they do. They love cables. And, you know, I've had it. I've had, you know, my dog, he chewed through a cable on a lamp. It wasn't plugged in because I just, you know, I was doing the safe thing as well. So it was all not plugged in. And, you know, I tried to put things out of the way as much as possible. But then I did leave that lamp where it was unplugged. So he obviously didn't do any damage in terms of electrocuting himself, but he still did it. And I was like, why would you chew a cable? You know, it's so weird. But they do. So, you know, you've got to be so aware, and there's so much there to go through. And of course, changing carpet's not funny, is it? So that's another couple of grand on top of your bill.
Yeah, but as I said, I left it there for 3 litters. I thought, well, it's only going to get chewed again, so I didn't fix it first.
That's fair enough. But if you were,
they've not chewed it again. They are very interested in it. When all the new, you know, the litters I've had since, they're very interested in the carpet at the bottom of the stair.
But the point is, though, again, if you are thinking of doing breeding and you are precious about your house, you've got to be aware, because I mean, it's easily 6 grand to recarpet a whole house. So, you know, those things can be very expensive. If you are precious and you want the whole house to have matching carpet everywhere, then it's going to be a big thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend carpet all downstairs with a litter of puppies.
It will be messy. So on the more sort of sad side, because obviously we do have to understand that not everything goes right all the time. You know, how do you feel when you lose one of your puppies? You know, one doesn't make it through to go to a new home through illness or whatever. How does that make you feel?
As I said, I've had about 8 litters, and I've only lost 1 puppy in those 8, and that was born dead. So I think that's a little bit different, being born dead to actually losing one. I think as you develop the kind of skill set, so I did have one that was not very well in the litter I had in the summer, and day 2 again really, really weak. And I think where I'd actually had someone sick with the puppies, and I was kind of busy out of classes and came back and then realised they just go downhill so quickly. And that 5 hours I was out for classes, she had gone boom. And I really, really thought I was gonna lose her. And I literally sat and because she couldn't suckle, she was too weak. So I couldn't even bottle feed her. And at that point, I didn't actually have tubes in for tube feeding. So this is about being prepared. So I literally sat there with a syringe all night, just putting little drops on her tongue, and managed to get her through it, bless her. She's 14 weeks and in the other room now, and doing really, really well. But I think you've got to be so prepared and have that experience. Of knowing what to do in that situation. So I would say I've had 2 that if I wasn't experienced, I would have lost, and it would be heartbreaking. Yeah, I thought I was going to lose her, and it was quite a lot of mental kind of torture to go through, really, thinking that you were going to lose them. So I know it would really upset me losing one.
Yeah.
But one being born dead was a bit better. And my biggest worry with it all is my bitch being okay. You know, I know I've lost bitches, and I think if that ever happened to me, it probably put me off for a week, to be honest. So I think really good.
I mean, no, but it's just really important to touch on, and that's why I wanted to ask the question, because again, you know, you think that everything's going to be all lovely, you know, and very Disney, and the fact is it isn't. And you know, and it can go wrong, and obviously, you know, it is very lovely a lot of the time, but when it does go wrong, it can be emotionally draining, and especially when you're already exhausted. You know,
all night giving birth to the baby, so you've already kind of lost a whole day's sleep, and then you know, you've got 2 days later, you're about to lose another whole day's sleep. And then, you know, because they're so weak, you've got to do this feeding every hour really till they're gaining strength. And it wasn't until about day 6 I could go to an hour and a half with her. The little boy's been worse because he was so premature. So I'm hoping to go to an hour and a half tonight. I've been up every hour with him. So it is really emotionally draining. It is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we've got, I'm so sorry if I can't pronounce your name properly, Annegret. She has said the best thing I bought was a large puppy pen, so I can be sure he is safe. And so if there are any cables or other items, not for the puppy's teeth exactly. So etc. So yeah, exactly. That's it. So it's a good idea to have a good big puppy pen. They can still be monkeys when they're out.
Yeah, they will be, and you know, we all kind of lose attention on them for a second when they're out, and things can happen. So I think it's still important to puppy breed them, and certainly as a breeder, You know, I get all the puppies used to crates. I have a pen set up so they're used to pens. There's crates in there when they're old enough for me to put crates in there so they're used to the crates. I don't shut the door, but then I've never had a puppy where they haven't just taken to crate training really, really easily.
Good, yeah.
Being a little bit sensitive and taking it at the pace for the puppy. But also I do lots of pen games. So I have a little phrase. If I went out into my garden, I teach them this little phrase. Actually, I changed it this time. I did it at bedtime. But I usually do time to reboot, and they all run into the garden and run into the pen, because that's where all the fun's about to start and where you've got all the food enrichment toys and stuff like that. So I think it's very important to get them used to that pen. And as a breeder, also really, really important to do individual work with the puppies.
Of course.
So, 4 weeks old, I'm taking those puppies into a room with just me and beginning to do some training. Introducing them to clickers, introducing them to key foundation behaviours, looking at you and you know, not necessarily, a little bit of kind of self-control around the food, so not fighting my hands to get the food, you know, so, and that takes time. You know, if you've got 7 puppies, really I can only probably get through kind of 3 in the morning, and I'm probably then putting in 3 or 4 in the afternoon to do that individual work. Yeah, so have got that kind of separation kind of in the pen. It just makes it so much easier for people if breeders have done this.
Oh, yes. Yeah. No, that's amazing. And Annegret also says, with my puppy, this was definitely needed, which is really good that she said and pointed out how important that all was. So well done. Thank you for joining in. Really appreciate that. So the next question I actually have, which kind of just which you brought me on to, is you know, what has been the major issues with poor breeding in your opinion? So what questions should people ask a breeder to be able to find out whether they've been good at doing these social skills and various things?
I think, again, gain as much knowledge as you can. The idea of me doing the puppy online course, it is about 9.5 hours, and but the first section of that is everything you need to think about before you get a puppy. You know, how to find the right breeder, what questions to ask the breeder. If you've got a really good breeder, you should find they're asking you as many questions as you're asking them. Yeah, because then you've got to, you know, I've got to find the right home for my puppy, because my contract will say I will take that puppy back should your circumstances change. Now they may be that, you know, you've got a job abroad and you know, there could be other changes in circumstances. But, you know, in most cases, breeders are going to get the puppy back. I would say a high percentage of cases, because people didn't have the knowledge. Maybe, you know, the dog has hit adolescence, things have gone wrong. They think, oh, it's only a puppy, it doesn't need training. There's a lot of breeders. I think I remember training with Sharon, that now trains for me, about 15 years ago when she had her great day. And she said, the breeder told me not to train him until he was a year old. He's not ready for training.
What?
So a Great Dane that had no training, you know, they're like sponges when they're puppies. So you can imagine how boisterous he was, you know, and don't get me wrong, there's lots of people that stick with it, but that's sometimes when they end up in rescue, because family life gets a little bit too hectic, the dog's gone a little bit wayward through lack of training. And that's what it's trying to avoid, really, is just giving people that knowledge up front. So if you understand the puppy's kind of development, you understand that then you need to do startle recovery, you know, loud noises. I mean, have a look on my Click to Heal website, I think, the Facebook site. The puppies that I did in September, there's lots of different activities I've been doing with them. You know, teaching them to come to the source of sounds where they get lots of food, so that they're getting confidence around noises. You know, different things that we do, like, you know, I'll have, you know, I'll walk up and down the garden with a walking stick with an old lady's little trolley bag. I will, you know, got a Zimmer frame that I walk around the garden with. We put wigs on. We have different people come around to work with the puppies. So expose, you know, ask the breeder, you know, what's your training program? What program do you put the puppies through? If they're, you know, what do you mean, what program? Then you more or less know that, you know, they're not the right breeder.
Okay, so that I just want to definitely make sure that I say that and repeat that so everybody can pick that up. What training program are you putting the puppy through? And if the breeder says, what are you talking about, then just walk away? I think that is a absolutely amazing question. So yeah, well done. And also, yes, I will touch, I have added all your links to the notes. So anybody watching, please do go through the comments below, and you'll see there's links for Di's courses and all sorts of things. There's a book on there. There's all sorts of things that can just help with the whole raising of good rounded puppies. And Di, I'm sure you're probably going to get about 1 million people asking you for your amazing puppies. I'm sure that Di cannot breed enough puppies for how many people are going to want them.
I really can't. To be fair, I breed as a breeder just to continue my line. So I breed when I want a puppy, and I breed if so. Like my youngest bitch is 4. Ideally, you would breed before they're 4 years old for the first litter. And then I would breed them again. I once had 3 litters from a dog, and I felt it was kind of a bit too much. So you want your last litter around the age of 7, ideally your first litter before 4. So I think for any bitch, 2 litters is probably enough. So you know, I breed them if I have to breed. Sometimes I'm breeding because I don't want a puppy, but I've got to breed the bitch because I may want one from the second litter. And because I'm involved in competitive sports, I'm very lucky in that, you know, I know lots of people involved in sports work, so a lot of mine do go to people with experience. I have probably, out of those 8 litters, I would say 4 have gone into family homes.
Excellent. Well, yeah, I mean, that's amazing information, and it's really good to hear about how many times you would breed a mother and stuff as well. And I think twice is plenty as well. It certainly works for people, doesn't it? So yes, but
just 1 too many.
exactly. I mean, there's always some outside of that, but you know, not many. So no, that's excellent. And so one of the main questions I would like to come up with as well is, because one of the things that comes up a lot is, how do you know you're actually seeing the mother of the, because there's all these random things that come up on Facebook, and there's all sorts of random excuses as to why someone's got all these puppies that they want to get rid of. And I've heard some shocking things, and God, it just makes you, you think there's something perhaps in the background that's making you question whether that's right, but you're just not sure. And then your heartstrings are pulled, and that's that. You're like, no, it's all fine. On poor little puppy, I'll take it home. How do you know that you're finding somebody that is the right mum even?
Yeah, and I think that's something, I think everyone's very keen to kind of try to prevent puppy farming, and that's what Lucy's Law that came in, that was it this year, was about. Great piece of work. But I think, people are then getting cleverer at what they do. So what they tend to do is puppy farm them. Then they find a nice family home to put all the puppies in with a dog, so that someone doesn't really realise these were puppy farm dogs, and they will sell them from there. So that's something that you've got to watch out for. And also something that is new, actually, to me, that has happened to a couple of my clients this year, is they've put a deposit down for the puppy. One of them I had booked in was coming to me for residential training, because although it's lovely to get your puppy at 8 weeks, I think they were being sensible in that we need to gain more knowledge. You're in that key socialization window. We're really keen to kind of bond with the puppy, but we know they're in this kind of key window, and we would like someone with experience to kind of look at this puppy and its needs so that we know what it needs going forward. And they phoned me up in the day and said, sorry, the puppy's not coming. And I said, well, why is the puppy not coming? Well, we paid this deposit, we've gone to the house to pick it up, and no one knew that there were even puppies there. So they're giving false addresses. That you paid this deposit, you turn up to this false address, and the people, have no idea what you're talking about. So I think that's another one. So just, make sure you are not putting down a deposit unless you have been to the breeder and you've seen them. So most breeders would put down, I think a deposit, I would take a deposit maybe at 4 or 5 weeks, or when they've first seen it.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with the person. So I want to make sure I met the person before I took a deposit anyway. So
of course, that makes sense, because you want to know who you're giving the dog to as well. I find it bonkers to be giving a random deposit to somebody if you've never met them.
I know, and that's where you've got to look for a good breeder who's going to really grill you. They're going to want to meet you, because at the end of the day, it's a lot of work taking back an 8-month-old or a year-old dog that's gone wrong. It could take me 6 months of working with that dog before I feel it's ready to home again. And that's an awful lot of work, which actually doesn't pay you anything. You do it because, you've read it and you're responsible for it. And that I would put it in the contract because I'd want to know that, my dog's coming back to me. I've got the experience to fix it. I don't want them just selling it online and moving the problem on to someone else that hasn't got the knowledge. So I find it's really important that dog comes back to me. And I think recognising the mum just takes a little bit of kind of dog experience. I would know whether it was the mum probably within a couple of minutes of walking in the room. I mean, if mum has been, so often, if you're going in to look at the puppies, 4 or 5 weeks old, mum shouldn't have been weaned at that point. So the puppies are all going underneath mum to search for the milk. And don't get me wrong, they will go underneath the dog. If I put one of my other bitches in there that hasn't, got milk, they will initially look, but the smell's not there, so they stop quite quickly. Now, when this time round, I've kind of naturally let my bitch kind of wean the puppy, so I didn't actually take the bitch away. And she did naturally wean them. And the bitch, when the puppies go to suck, she spins around really quick and puts her head there. And she can do it. It's amazing when you see them do it with like 7 puppies, that they can have their head there and then another one's coming round and then they jump around quickly because they're trying to stop them from feeding at that point. But also, if you feel underneath mum, I mean, even if she is dried up and there's no milk there now, you'll feel the looseness of, where the milk was. It takes a while for all of that to tighten up as it would on us. So you're gonna notice just by, touch. If you can't identify it based on the bitch's behaviour, they just have a feel underneath her.
Yeah, and I think also I just want to point out that it's really, really important that people recognise that it's okay to ask hard questions, because the bad breeders, the dodgy ones, they're not they're not green-faced people that are really obvious in a really grotty house, which is what we all imagine is, it's puppy farm, it's going to be like poo everywhere. That's not how it is at all. It will look like a normal average home, and it will look all the bee's knees. In fact, these people are con artists making loads of money off you after all, so they've got no shortage of finance. So so you've got
a little cockapoos. I mean, some of them are going for like 2,500, I think, recently. So
I've seen more than that.
Offer a family, I'll give you £200 per puppy if you can just home them here for a week while we sell them. And people will do it. So you've really got to. I want to know. I mean, what I tend to do with mine is I'm sending them little video updates all the time. This is what I've done with the puppies. So I set up a WhatsApp group. I have set up Facebook groups before, but I've tended to stay away and do it not more personal through kind of WhatsApp. So I'm constantly sending them videos about what I'm doing with the puppies, why I'm doing it, because it's educating them. And also it's building that level of excitement. They're really excited about their puppy coming home. You want to get them involved. So I think if breeders are doing nothing, then, to educate the new homes they're going to, then I would just, question why they're breeding.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm just going to jump over to what people are saying, because there's some big comments coming in. So Jem, thank you so much for getting involved. She has said, we're looking for our first puppy, really worried about COVID breeders, not really because of the price, but because of greed. As in somebody breeding for money rather than the passion and caring, which I can understand. Do we hold off till demand ceases and the prices drop, or just find a really good breeder who isn't asking for the world, as in over odds pre-COVID prices? It's a good question.
It's really tricky, isn't it? Because I mean, probably my colleagues, I was selling for about £900. I must admit, I put my prices up to £1,200, but that's not a huge kind of, and I think the amount of work I put into them, and really, it's because like farm collies, I could go and buy a collie bred on a farm. The puppies have been living in a barn for 8 weeks, and that would be £1,200. And I think I put all this work in to my puppies, so I have put my prices up a bit. But there's no way a cockapoo can really jump from £1,500 to £3,000. That's quite a big jump.
It is, but that's exactly the point, though. I have seen that myself too. There was on one of the vet forums, someone shared a graph, and literally the cockapoo prices had doubled. It was literally 100% more. So I can completely understand where Jem's coming from, because I mean, of course, everything goes up every year. That's normal inflation, and like you say, it's not unreasonable to cover your costs at all. But I can see where Jem's coming from, because I have seen those posts where it's literally 100% pay rise. But I think the problem with that situation, in my view, is who knows what will change in a year's time? Who knows if they've set the bar this high and that's where it will stay? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it could do. I think, I'd still be happy personally to pay £3,000 for a dog if I felt the breeder had done a good job. So I think it's down to asking the questions.
Yeah.
Have a look at my online course. It's about 3 pages of questions that I would want to ask the breeder and see what their answers are. And it is difficult when you're looking for the cross breeds because, I would always recommend people go maybe to the kennel club to look for breeders, but they're going to be purebreds. So I think it does get harder, and you've got to do your research well when you're looking for jackapoos and cockapoos and cavapoos and things like that. So do your research. It could take you 6 months to find a good breeder.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good answer. Ultimately, it's if it's the breeder and it's worth it. I mean, that's like everything in life, isn't it? You're paying for value. And so, if and you want the high end, you want this to be Harrods styly, because you want that much level of care to have gone in. So, if you think that someone's put that much effort, then it's worth it. If someone hasn't put that much effort in, then no, that's not worth it. And so you have to reward the right people is where you're going with that.
I would rather go on a list with a breeder. I'd rather wait a year because I found the right breeder, and in actual fact, they're not going to be any for kind of a year. In fact, I've got a good friend, Stevie, who maybe watch it, that breeds cotton de Touliers, and she has, a huge list of people waiting, and they're prepared to wait a year, 2 years for, a well-bred dog.
I agree.
All of her clients have been so happy with them. They've been so well balanced. She's never had one returned because, the foundations are there.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. The waiting list thing's absolutely fine. It's no reason to not have to wait, is there really? So, and the best things come to those who wait.
Yeah, they haven't got a waiting list. Why haven't they got a waiting list?
Yeah, very good point. So Jem has just said that she's also seeing puppies for 2,000 to 3,000. So it's not unreasonable that what she's seeing. So
as a breeder, it is a lot of work. And as I say, I give up my day job for 8 weeks. And I lose money because I can earn a lot more in my day job. So I can understand why, if you're doing a job well, I can understand why the prices of puppies can be that much because it is a lot of work. But it's just making sure that the breeder has earned their money. Don't go giving 3,000 to someone that's done no research, no health tests on both sides of the parents, is not doing anything. They may be being nice to the puppies. But they're being nice because they haven't got the knowledge to know what they should do.
Yeah.
Nice wouldn't be good enough for me. There's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Yeah, and no, exactly. It's a really good point, and that's what I was trying to say earlier as well. Is that it's some breeders. It's not necessarily about being bad. It's just that they haven't updated. So that's all.
Some people decide, I love my little Bella, and there's Harry down the road. Wouldn't they make lovely puppies? And
yes, exactly.
Because they want another Bella. But they have no idea. Bella turned out lovely without any training because some dogs can. And they put them together and they don't know what they're doing, but they did the best. They fed the dogs. They were lovely to the dogs. They interacted with the dogs. But what have they missed out in their key development? I say to people, did they do a noise desensitization program? Oh no, I don't think so. So it's it was a noisy household. They had kids. So it's the not understanding or not gaining the knowledge that they need on what puppies need to be exposed to at key developmental stages.
Exactly, and we all sit and moan about the fireworks because we worry about our dogs, and then that's one of the things that could have been avoided by getting it right from the start. So it's understandable. So Wendy's also said something, so I'm just putting that on. So thanks, Wendy, for joining us. Hi, I'm wondering if Diane breeds collies for agility, and if so, how much she charges. This year, we know puppy farmers have gone really mad, stealing breeding, and then selling pups with no health tests and not where anyone would willingly go, but still charging £2,000 to £3,000 easily. There are many agility people that can no way pay for those prices, but the dogs would have had the best life ever. So I think Wendy, Di has definitely covered that really, because obviously we've discussed where the value is, and so it's a case of finding the right breeder. But obviously, Di, maybe you can elaborate here, because I think the other point that Wendy made is that obviously you might have a great home at the end of it, and that's no bad thing, obviously. But the point is, if the puppy's not been raised in the right way, you're going to have a much harder time trying to make that amazing family or agility dog. Is that right? Have I got that right?
Yeah, so I mean, I would be looking, you know, most people I know in the sports world that are breeding collies and top people in agility that are breeding collies, they're probably of a similar price. They're probably about £1,200. And they would have done, you know, they understand training. A lot of them understand a lot about behaviour. They would have been putting the kind of right program in place. What I would advise, you know, yes, there'll be a lot of farm collies. And you know, if I turned up to a location to buy a litter and they were all in a barn, I'd walk away. Yeah, and a lot of my clients, you know, when they have been to places where the puppies are in poor condition, they're like, well, I felt sorry for it, I had to turn around and get it. But the trouble is that's encouraging those people to carry on breeding. I think, you know, although it's really difficult when you see puppies in poor condition, go, right, I'm going to walk away from that rather than buy one to save one. You're just encouraging it, you know, and that's how they continue. So as much as it's hard to do, I would walk away and I would report it to the right places.
It's really hard. It is really hard. And I do want to add that, you know, because I know there'll be loads of people watching this going, I've been in that situation and I couldn't walk away. And I just want to say, I totally understand that. But Di is right. Unfortunately, not feeding it is not helpful, but I do definitely understand that, and I don't know what I would do in that situation. As a result, I keep myself out of that situation.
I would really find it hard, but my mission would be going and finding the right people to report this to and try and
and of course we all know that those reports aren't necessarily always doing anything either, which is really frustrating, isn't it? So I totally get. I would cry. I literally would just probably.
I think I would, because I'd be it would be upsetting. But those puppies are a lot of work, and if you haven't got the knowledge, you've got to think those dogs can stay in a state of anxiety and stress for the rest of their lives if you haven't got the knowledge to pull them out of it. So although you think you're being nice taking it home, I might be being nice taking it home because I might be able to put it through and give it a really, you know, get it out of itself and build its confidence. I know it's going to be so much work.
Yeah.
So if you don't know what you're doing, that dog is not going to, you know, what we're looking for is a dog, you know, a happy family dog that can be, you know, like your children, the best that they can be, to really enjoy life. And it takes a good bit of experience if they've really had a bad start in life.
Yeah. So we've got loads of comments coming in now. So Marianne says, reward good breeders. Love this, Donna. Thanks, Marianne. And absolutely, yes, we should reward good breeders. And that is what this is about, is celebrating good breeders. Stevie has jumped on to say, cheers, Di, for your lovely comments. So she very much appreciates that. Jem has also said, how important is Kennel Club registered puppies if we aren't looking for breeding ourselves or showing? I think it's more not wanting to line the pockets of people who don't care. Know a friend who got one recently with no questions were asked from the breeder to the buyer. Yeah, I mean, well, from my point of view, it's not so much about the Kennel Club, but about questioning your breeder, isn't it? Do you think?
At that point, you're better off doing it all on the phone, because then you've not walked in and seen anything that's bad and feel sorry for them and want to take them home. If they're not asking you questions, in my opinion, they're not a good breeder.
Yeah, I
think that puppy back if anything goes wrong. They're not putting time into it. They're not earning their money.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it, really. I think that's like one of the biggest things, because I feel like that's going to be the biggest falling point for any breed, like for any of these. You know, the minute you ring up and you don't have an hour's conversation, that's it. Because it sounds like, you know, you should be having a big long conversation right from the start, because, you know, no breeder equally wants to waste their time with somebody if they think they're going to be useless. So I think
people contact me because I have got one puppy in, you know, the premature puppy. Bless him, he has got a little kink in his tail, so his tail kind of grows down and then it goes straight across. Bless him. And sometimes, although it's a little bit sad, in competitive sports, if you're doing agility, if you're doing obedience, you know, the tail, you know, is there for a lot of balance. Okay, so, you know, I've spoken to kind of vets about it because I've never had a puppy like this before, and they said probably 90% of the time they're going to be okay. You know, in 10% of cases, he might need to have his tail off because it could impact on balance. So I know there's a lot of sports people that wouldn't want him. And I know, so I've had a couple of people contact me that I kind of heard about him. And I didn't grill them on the phone. I said, I want you to come out and meet him in 5 weeks because I like to have that kind of conversation face to face. I want to be able to meet them, see how they are with the puppy, and then I'm going to do a lot of those kind of questions.
Okay. So it's not necessarily a phone conversation, but you should be expected to come and do a face-to-face meeting. I mean, again,
probably though, because a lot of mine don't go to pet homes. If I was breeding a breed where they were going to, you know, family homes, I would do a lot more breeding of that on the phone. I'm pretty sure Stevie does that side of things. But because mine go to kind of agility people or competitive sports people, and I tend to know the people they're going to, I'm probably not used to doing that grilling on the phone. And I thought, actually, I want to meet them face to face. If they're families, I want to see how the children are, and I want to meet them face to face to do all that talking. So.
Okay. So either way, it's definitely a good conversation and lots of questioning from the breeder. So don't expect to be the one that's the only interviewer. It's a two-way conversation and it should be a thick one. Okay. So Paula has also jumped on. Thank you for joining us, Paula. And she says, we were very naive 11 years ago when buying a puppy, when we found someone who invited us to come to see their litter and they seemed genuine. We travelled to London and when we got there, it was a pet shop. He took us through the shop to see the puppies, but when we got there, I knew straight away he was selling for a puppy farm. We bought Lily anyway and reported him and he got shut down. But Lily's had terrible trouble with her legs, as Donna will vouch for, and our vet bills in the last 7 years. Thank you for sharing that, Paula, because that's exactly it. I mean, at the end of the day, you're human. And, you know, that's what we're trying to have this conversation for here, is to try and discuss exactly those points that we need to try and avoid. And you did what loads of us would do. And we've just said that Di and I would both be crying in those situations and it would be awful. But you've reported him. He was shut down. So perfect. Well done. Absolute hallelujah. And yes, she's had terrible trouble with her legs. And Paula, oh my God, the amount of time she has spent doing rehab for that dog, although that dog, her hailing ability is incredible. She's amazing. But yes, I don't think she's got, she might have one leg left that she hasn't had an operation on. It's really incredible. But yeah, I mean, wow, she loves her dog so much.
There'll be dogs that have had their health tests. The bitch has maybe had 5 or 6 litters and is not healthy herself, brought up in poor conditions. You know, I remember 10 years ago, I think on the A4 there was a garden centre and they used to sell them in there. And I couldn't believe that even 10 years ago that they would do that. And they had the puppies stood on wire meshing, so like squares like this. So if they weaned or pooed, it went through. Yeah, so they weren't and they were just lying on wire meshing, empty wire mesh crates. It's disgusting. You know?
Yeah.
So you can imagine what that does to the formation of their legs.
Absolutely. So Paula has just said, yeah, she's had all 4 legs operated on. So yeah, all of them. And she's also said not knowing the puppy's parents' history is so important now. Now to ever stop her buying another puppy. So yeah, that's fantastic.
I think look for those health tests. I mean, when you send those blood tests off, I've got all the paperwork for my bit showing all the results. You know, ask the breeder. You know, a good breeder said to me, can I have a look at your health test? I'll be thinking, oh, I've got someone that's got some knowledge. Well done for asking. Well done for checking. I'd be delighted that they were asking me. So,
yeah, no, that's a really good point.
Look at the paperwork. Yeah,
definitely. Because yeah, a lot of times I'm sure there's situations where they say, yeah, it's all done. And then you're expected to just accept it. And that would be crazy.
What was the elbow score? Can I see the paperwork? You know,
absolutely.
All good breeders would probably smile when you ask them and think, oh, thank God someone's really kind of doing their homework.
Yeah, no, well done. So I'm just going to pop up some of the other comments. The police won't go in and raid these sites. We have highlighted so many. I run Find UK Dogs, and the amount we eventually recover has been used and abused. I hope the BBC airing doesn't go ahead. It's so worrying. Wendy, exactly. I mean, we know these things happen, and that's one of the reasons why we're, you know, trying to have this conversation and trying to get these thoughts out there, is so that people have got a good awareness of these things. And unfortunately, there's not a lot we can do about the authorities, but we can all try and do our little bits. And, you know, if we can take this knowledge and share it with other people, then obviously that's going to hopefully help and, you know, try and be positive. And yeah, I just think that BBC thing was crazy, and I don't think it's going to go ahead. I really. But anyone watching, if you haven't signed the petition, then look in the notes and sign it, because I've put a link in there, because that's just crazy talk. So Jem has also said, Wendy, I worked in a police neighbourhood team in West Berkshire, and our team has successfully shut down and prosecuted those involved and regularly check that she hasn't got any animals responsibility. Please don't stop reporting. Oh, Jem, thank you so much for sharing that. Really positive. That's really positive.
Walk away and report it.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad that you shared that, Jem, because unfortunately we do hear much more stories of people not getting prosecuted than people getting prosecuted. And that's, of course, one of those situations that everybody has a good experience, I'll tell one person, everybody has a bad experience, I'll tell 10 people. So I think it's really good that you shared that, because otherwise we don't know that. So so everybody keep reporting, because it does make a difference. So yes, well done. Thank you. Wendy also said, Jem, well done. So yes, everybody's saying well done. And I think you guys are going to contact each other, which is fabulous. Well done. And Jan also wants to say hi to Diane from the Netherlands. We've got international. Excellent. So we've caught up. So one of the questions I was going to ask was, how many puppies have you ever had returned?
I've had one returned. Now, he was, I'm going to guess now, I think he was about 18 months, 2 years when he returned. He was with a competition person. And he'd run, being a herding breed, they like to chase, and he'd run head on into a goalpost at full speed. And he'd done his main kind of brachial plexus nerve. Couldn't get him into Fitzpatrick's quick enough, wasn't using his leg. And I didn't say at the start, but I've also got a rehab centre, so I've got a hydrotherapy pool here and a water treadmill. So we do see a lot of these, adolescent type dogs when all the injuries start coming in. Anyway, I took him back and I said, look, let me take him back, and at least I can kind of put him in the pool. Let's see if we can do some work. Let's see if we can get some feeling back in that leg. And after a week, I thought that there's just too much damage. This isn't going to work, and he really does need his leg amputated. And then I had a very good physio come out and work with him, and they set up with him. So that was absolutely ideal.
Yes, exactly. Well, I'm going to, because he's right here. I have got him now, so I have got one of Di's dogs, and I have to say, incredibly well rounded. And come through the rescue route, obviously. But the point I was trying to make with that question as well was the fact that obviously you have had to take a dog back, so it's not like an expense that went away. At any point you've got any number of dogs that could come back to you. So if you went and had 1,200 puppies, that could be a very expensive household you've got.
I worry as time goes on as well, because competitive obedience is quite a kind of, I suppose there's more old people in the sport. Of course, I've given some puppies to some older people, I'd say above 70. So give it another 5 or 6 years, I think I'm going to have a house full, because I always say, you will take it back, Di, if anything happens to me. So it's all right. I'm going to have in 8 years.
It's all right, because you can just keep calling me, so it's fine. I'm very happy to take on your dog, so it's not a problem. He's chilling right here. I'm surprised he hasn't jumped up to say hello. But no, that it's just a really important point, is that you can't think that your dogs have gone because they've gone, because they might pop back at any moment. Steve also says hi from Kent. So hi, Steve.
Hi,
nice to see you. So Steve wants to know, how do you cope with giving puppies away after bonding with them?
It is hard, but I find, and I hope they're going to keep, I think the research is continuing. So I've heard at seminars, because they're supposed to go at 8 weeks old, and I really do feel as a breeder that last week, and you get the slight changes in kind of personality, where they're just, the bullies are becoming more bullyish, and they're all coming out of themselves. And I must admit, as a breeder, I think they're far better off going at 7.5 weeks. And you've got a high percentage maybe in that fear period at 8 weeks. So you are, as a breeder, I'm really, really watching in that last week, where are the puppies at? Is it going to be the right time for them to move? Making suggestions to the new owners about how to do that. You're trying to look at them all as individuals. And I find it much harder when I know I'm going to keep a puppy for later. So I'm going to keep a bitch from this litter, and there's 3 bitches, and I'll be, oh, I like that one because of that, and I like that one because of that, and have I made the right choice? And then you pick one, and then you really like the other one, you're not really, and yeah, it can break your heart. You know, when I've decided to have a boy, and I really, really loved a girl in the litter, and I'm still friends with them now, and you know, you look back and think, actually, I always pick the right one because you always love them. But you look back and you look at what, you know, 1 or 2 of the dogs and think, oh, I wish I'd had that one, I wish I had kept that one. And that's probably the downside of giving them to lots of people that you know, because you see them in competition all the time. So you think, oh, I should have kept that one. So it is hard. I've shed a few tears over some of them. But you know, a lot of people say, I don't know how you give any of them away. You know, I want to keep all of them. You really couldn't, because you're going to do the puppies so much damage. I sometimes have clients. I've got a client at the minute that said, well, the breeder gave me 3 puppies. I mean, would that be a good breeder? As a breeder, I have once given someone 2 puppies, and that's because there were 2 people in the household that did competitive sports and they took a puppy at the same time. I would never usually give 2 puppies to one person. So I think if you're being offered 2 puppies, again, maybe not a good breeder. So yes, it's hard letting them go, but they need to go to become their individual self and things like that. So the good thing is, I know they need to go.
Well done. That's, yeah, and again, you've just touched base that basically it's, it is a very emotional thing for you and really, really tough. So, well done sharing that, because that's a vulnerable thing. Can I just ask as well, because this is totally not on my list, but I'm curious. So you said about the age being sort of between 7.5 weeks and 8 weeks as being ideal. In Germany, I'm just really aware that they do a lot of them at 12 weeks. I just happened to be talking to a friend of mine over there, so I don't know how standard that is. And I just wondered if you had an opinion on that.
Yeah, and whether maybe in the US they might even do 12 weeks. I don't know how people, if you had a big litter, say you had a big litter of 10, say you got 10 Malinois or German Shepherds, I can't see how that is good for the puppy, keeping them till 12 weeks, because the kind of play activities and them getting over aroused and over threshold because they're getting overtired and they don't have that impulse control. By going to their individual homes, I think they actually that's when they start to develop a little bit more kind of impulse control. There's only so much you can do as a breeder when you've got lots of them. So I couldn't imagine trying to keep them until they're 12 weeks old. I mean, a small litter, if I had Cotte de Toulouse like Stevie does and I've got 2 or 3 puppies, easy. If I've got a litter of 10 Malinois, I don't know how you would do that to 12 weeks. I mean, you'd have to start having individual enclosures. I actually did that with my puppies by about 7.5 weeks. Some of the play activities, although it was all on good traction, I was a little bit concerned where they were going. What I started doing in the room, I created a big maze in the room. Okay, so just with using puppy barriers, so that they had different petitions and they had different activities, so it made them spread out a little bit more. So that's how I managed them in the last 4 or 5 days, because I wasn't happy where some of the play behaviour was going, and what that would be like then when they got into their homes, and what that did to their personality. I felt that last week, they kind of changed from these softly, lovely little cutie puppies to just getting a little bit kind of, too beyond themselves, really.
That's very, very interesting, and it's good to hear your opinion on that as well. So thank you for sharing that. So I also want to say that we've gone past the hour mark. Are you okay to carry on? Because
there's questions and people are happy to listen. I'm more than happy. Yeah.
They really are. So thank you so much for that. We will carry on. So Nicola has very kindly shared that we all shed a few tears when they went. And I think that's really kind of you to share that, because, like I say, it is an emotional time, and it's really important that people recognise how hard it is for a good breeder. So well done.
So Nicola lived with me and raised one of the litters with me. Thank you, Nicola. And yeah, she was really upset. So,
oh, bless.
There's 2 or 3 that always steal your heart, and it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, I imagine. Blimey. So Jenny says, no way would it suit mine to stay until 12 weeks. They would learn all the wrong things. So yeah, that is an interesting
with the German Shepherd. Yeah, the things that they would learn, honestly, I don't think 12 weeks would be good at all.
So Steve has also said, great opinion, Di. So thank you for that. Well done. So I wanted to also find out, have any of your dogs ever needed a Caesarean or anything medical, and how have you felt about that?
Luckily, no. And in actual fact, a friend of mine, she may be on here, Veronica, she's been having a really tough time. Her golden retriever, she's just had a first litter with, and she had problems. And one of the sure signs you're looking for a breeder is if, you know, I had with my bitch, waters kind of break on the bed, and I just do kind of wet patch, and straight away then you're kind of, you know, dabbing around that area to see if there's any kind of greeny kind of discharge would be a sure sign that you need to get to the vets, and she had that. So she had to rush to the vets. There was a puppy stuck in that birth canal, the first one. She had to have a C-section, and then of course the dog hadn't even given birth to one puppy. So, and she'd never had a litter before. So although she's got the training behind the dog, which is probably a key thing if you are going to be first-time breeders, make sure you've got some training behind the dog, because the dog's got a good settle, it will lie on the floor, you know, it's got a good kind of, you know, relationship with the mum, so the mum can get it to settle and she can feed the puppies, but there's no connection. The bitch has to, you know, in the first 2 weeks, you know, the bitch kind of licks them to stimulate them to kind of wee and poo, and she won't do that. Because she just doesn't have that connection. So yeah, that's not happened to me. The litter I've got at the minute, it is a first-time bitch, and I've never had this with one of my bitches before. My bitches always got obsessed about staying in the welcome box. In fact, they don't even want to go out for a wee. You more or less have to drag them out, and then they can more or less fill up a bucket when by the time you take them out. But she was out within seconds. She didn't want to stay with them at all. Now she will with them, but it means I can't even leave her later on to go, you know, the puppy's been feeding through the night. I'm going to have to wake up and kind of help her and coax her in. Come on, puppy, let's go and feed the puppies, which I'm having to do now. So she's not, I wouldn't say she's a natural mother. But, you know, in Veronica's situation with Cookie, you know, she's got 10 puppies. That she's having to do kind of supplement feeding, so it's literally, you know, an hour and a half it takes her, and then she's got an hour and a half again. Luckily, they're both retired, so her husband helps her, so she has an hour and a half sleep while the husband does the next lot, and then so they're on rotation. So wow. It's incredibly hard work, and you really don't want to be having a C-section for your first litter.
As I say, how gutted, you know, if you're, that's proving the point. You've got to be so prepared even for that first one. And it also does, you know, stimulate some memories for me that obviously dogs do, you know, things happen. I mean, I used to be an emergency and critical care nurse, and you do get phone calls, and, you know, the first thing you say is, because they'll ask you the most like beige question, I call it, you know, and the first thing you end up saying is like, have you read a book, you know, like, do you know anything about birthing at all? And they think, no, I just thought they'd get on with it. And you just think, oh my god, because you don't even know where to start in that moment, and you just literally huge face plant. And then that poor owner is in the most awful situation, because you actually struggle to help them because you don't even know where to start explaining things. And then also there's other complications as well, like you said about the not bonding thing. I was saying I didn't even think about talking to you about, but you know, I've known dogs that have eaten their own puppies, and you just don't, you know, you wake up in the morning.
Sometimes when they're licking them as well, they can, you know, chewed off tails, chewed off legs.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Right? So you've got to be there, I think, for that birthing process, especially for the first time. You know, when you've got a more experienced bitch, then yeah, maybe you could potentially get away with leaving them. But at the end of the day, if it's a dog that you love, then hopefully you're going to be there for them through the process and help them should there be any complications.
Yeah, and it is just the most sad and, you know, scary feeling to be in that most vulnerable position as well and not know what to do. I mean, from a Caesarean point of view, from a nurse, you know, you're sitting there thinking, should they even get in the car or not? Because 9 times out of 10 they get in the car and then they birth, and you really wanted them to have done that at home. And you just think,
I did that this time round because I had a puppy tail hanging out. So the puppy wasn't in the sack because the tail was exposed. She had been having very weak contractions and just, I thought that's just not going to push the puppy out. And then the tail would come out and then it sucked back in. And then after 20 minutes, I thought this is not going well. And this was the first puppy. So I thought she's going to have trouble. And so I phoned the vet. I said, look, I'm coming down. Got her in the back. Well, she did a little bum scoot outside. And then as she went to jump in the van, there was the puppy. So we had the puppy in the van. And then it was like, great, right, let's get her back upstairs. And we had the rest of the litter in the house, luckily. But
yeah,
after 20 minutes of the puppy being kind of stuck there, you do get worried and think, you know, this could affect everything. And you don't, you know, my most important thing is that my bitch is, you know,
and that moment must have been just so scary for you. Bless you. So just to go back to my lovely people watching and commenting, Steve says we waited, well, let me get it on this thing. Steve said we waited 2 years for our first puppy. Yay, well done. That's good. That's good organising. It's worth the wait and the travelling of the whole country. Well done. That's fantastic. And then Anna Gret has got back on and she said 12 weeks is way too long to stay with litter mates. I had my last 2 puppies between 7 and 8 weeks, and that seems right to me. They are independent enough to leave the bitch and receptive to be put in the new environment and bond well with the new family. Well, that's really great information. It's really good to hear so much, agreement.
7.5 weeks to 8 weeks.
That's fabulous.
They're ready to go then.
And Wendy says, it's so lovely to hear Diane, who being so happy to be open and honest. Thank you. I agree, Diane. Thank you. I wonder if Diane has any worries about some agility breeders. No names needed, obviously, but owners, handlers look up to those who are successful. But is there another side also? It's a good question.
Probably, I don't, there's probably some people in there. I tell you what, although I'm involved in competitive sports, okay, I really don't like people politics. So I let it all go over my head. I wouldn't have a clue who you're talking about. And when people tell me things, I've got a memory of a goldfish and I'm also not interested. So if you've ever got any gossip, I'm the safest person to tell because I won't remember a few days later. I have no idea. So, I think, we've been through a lot of the information about what a good breeder should look like. And just don't encourage those people that if you don't feel they're good, then just don't buy their puppies.
I think that's really perfect comment. Absolutely perfect comment, because, you're absolutely right. There's politics in absolutely everything, isn't there? And you do have to just stay out of it. Because the thing is, you can't cope if you listen to that, because you just end up just feeling awful all the time hearing it. So I think that's right. I think you just have to hear it. It doesn't matter what their background is. You just have to ask the questions and really judge them as an individual and not look at their titles or whatever, and just ask the questions and find out what they're doing from that point of view. I think that's very wise. So I think I asked, so do you think anyone, oh yes, that was it, because basically I wanted to know, do you think that people should do official training before they are able to breed? And I know you've done courses and I thank you for that, so well done. But how official do you think it should be?
I've seen, I think it was, I didn't realise in different European countries they do have different things. And something that I did like in Germany was that you have to have a license to breed. They have people come out and check your home, that they turn up after the litter are born in the first week, and they also turn up in week 8 to check the puppies are supposed to still with you and kind of, talk to you about your program and what you're doing with the puppies. So I thought that was really good. I mean, they obviously, to have the money to be able to do that for all the litters. But in Germany as well, I suppose maybe the one downside for those people in the UK that do like the crossbreeds is they don't have any crossbreeds. So they take the mickey out of cockapoos and jugs and things like that. They don't have that because it's all they're all pure breeds. So you have to have a license. So I like some of that around it, so that you've got kind of checks going out. And then if you've got a license, that's an obvious thing for people to say, well, if you've got a breeding license, then you've been checked out, haven't you? And there'd be a lot of people, I think, that breed in the UK that wouldn't be eligible for a license. So that would maybe put a stop to some of it. I'm very much on the page of, if breeders should go on a training program, I'd hope that if people are doing it for the right reasons, they're going to go out there and try and get as much knowledge as they can. I think I started off with the Book of the Bitch, and Jane Killen's Puppy Culture is just, fabulous for anyone new to breeding. Have a look at that, because, she's done a fabulous job of putting all that together to show you what you should do. And I think probably I'd take it to the next level of I think people, new puppy owners should have some kind of free training, or at least, and that's why if any of my puppies now going forward, and some of my friends that are breeding puppies are also doing it, I'm insisting you've got to buy my course and you've got to watch the entire course to have one of my puppies. And I wouldn't let them go to them unless they've watched the course.
I think that's a really good idea, because, you know, again, like most people, when they have a baby, they will read a book, or they will, you know, enter into all sorts of training one way or another. I mean, not everyone can do the same type of training, like their learning ability is different, if you see what I mean, which I understand. But I think it does make sense to definitely do proper learning, and I definitely like the idea of that licensing as well. It sounds amazing.
You know, although I'm educating kind of local vets on this, you know, it's always been the same, that you take your puppy to the vet for maybe a health check. So the breeder's done the first vaccination. I'd always encourage people, just take it for a puppy health check, because it's good for it to have a positive experience where it's not being necessarily vaccinated. And, you know, but a lot of vets, and this probably still happens all over the country, is they give them that first vaccination and then they say, well, they're not allowed out until they're 12 weeks. So then people keep them at home until they're 12 weeks, when they're in that key socialization window, when they've got to get exposure. You know, lots of ways to do your socialization safely without putting the puppy on the floor, because maybe a lot of vets might not have that experience to say, right, okay, you can't have puppy on the floor, but you're in a key socialization window. So it's important for them to be exposed at the right level for the dog. Now, they might not be standing outside the school gates, which might be a bit overwhelming for a small puppy with all the kids screaming. You know, it's okay at, you know, the school gates if you're parked way over there and they're just getting a reference point for now, and we can get closer as we're building confidence. But it's making sure, you know, I get a lot of people phone me up, you know, they've got their puppy, my puppy's 12 weeks, is ready to be trained. Right, so you've just missed 4 weeks of their key socialization window. And obviously I can't say that to people, but they begin to realise when they come to classes and they're doing their 5-week course, and you know, during lockdown, in actual fact, we had a lot less inquiries about puppy training, because people think puppy training is all about socialization with dogs. You know, and when they've done my 5-week course, they were like, that was nothing to do with the socialization with dogs. You were training me, weren't you? It is all about training the person. And yes, classes are good for socialization, but good for calm and positive kind of socialization. You know, the first thing we're going to train is, let's just lie here calmly and chew your Kong on your little mat in a room full of other dogs. That's good, positive socialization. So, you know, Zoom sessions, to me, you know, you'd have thought people would have been still inquiring about those, but there is still this mindset that socialization is about meeting as many people and meeting and playing with as many dogs as possible, which is absolutely not the case. You know, it's all about the whole world around them, you know, the pram, the umbrella, the noises, the sounds, the smells, it's everything that this dog is going to see within its life. So to get some reference material and know how to do that, you really want to get as much, you know, if you're going out there to get a puppy, you really want a lot of education before that puppy comes home. You need your plan of action. You know, what is the crate setup going to look like? How are you puppy proofing the house? What are you going to teach the puppy in the first week? Where are your priorities? You know, if you've never owned a dog before, there's pointless learning that when they're 12 to kind of, you know, 16 weeks in puppy class. You know, learn it beforehand. Try and get yourself better equipped so that you've got some skills in there, so that you're better able to handle the dog in puppy class. You know, for my clients, I would be able to spot them instantly in a class. If I have a new 6 people in a class, I'd go, right, you 3 have bought the online course, and I know the others haven't.
Yeah, no, no, it's really, that's really, really important.
Not only breeders, but people getting a puppy. You know, so if, you know, if good breeders can maybe get on the page of recommending, you know, good online courses and say, you know, I'm not going to, you know, if you're not willing to invest £79 on this course, it's going to give you the knowledge you need for life, then I'm not going to allow you to have one of my puppies. You know, it's £79 well invested if you're going to spend £3,000 on a puppy.
Well, it saves you the behaviourist bill later, trying to fix the problem.
And trying to fix the problem. And, you know, for £79, I mean, it's going to cost an awful lot more in lessons to fix problems later on. And it's so much harder to fix problems later on once it's established.
And again, it's worth pointing out that ultimately this comes back exactly the same from a people point of view. You know, the minute you get pregnant, that's it. You know, you've got 9 months of preparation, and that is exactly what people do. I mean, they may not think about that's what they're doing, but they are. They're spending all that time getting their head around it, and then they're buying stuff. And every time you go to mother care or whatever, you are finding out nuggets of information. And it's, you know, it's exactly the same thing. So you don't just wait till all of a sudden it's come home. Oh, let's nip the the pet shop on the way home, pick up the bowl of food and the bowl of water or whatever, and which unfortunately I do know that does happen, and
but it's not just about the equipment, isn't it? It's the mindset of, right, okay, I have so many people phone me up crying, just going, I never realised a puppy would be so much hard work. It's nearly as much hard work as having a baby. And it is, the more you know, the easier it is. I would find it easy to raise a puppy. I just don't have all the problems that my clients have. Because I just know how to do it, and I don't end up in those problems. So the more knowledge you have, it's so much easier on your stress levels. Yeah.
So I'm just going to jump over to our lovely audience again. So Sarah says, over the time you have been breeding, what, if anything, have you kept the same when raising puppies? And what do you think has changed the most? That's a good question.
Oh, that's a good one, isn't it? Sarah likes to challenge me. Okay. So what have I not changed? I think we changed everything. I've changed what I feed them. I've changed the whole room setup. Is there anything that's the same? Probably the setup in the bedroom is the same. So I have the welcome box near the bed. Those first 2 weeks and doing the startle recovery response is probably the same as what I've always done. I think as new research comes in, like the neonatal period, and doing the neurological stimulation test that I've been doing probably over the last 5 years. So that came in. I've got a lot more kind of puppy gym equipment this time round. So I think, things change all the time, and I'm always trying to think of new things to kind of expose them to. What can I do that's different, that's going to help them going forward? And I think there's lots of people out there that are creative thinkers. So you pick different bits up from different trainers, and going to seminars and conferences. You pick little, good little noodles up of information that you can then kind of change things up a bit.
That's fantastic. And again, it's just pointing out the fact that how much evolves over all these years is a constant change. You've just pointed out stuff has changed 5 years ago, stuff has changed in the last year. So amazing. So Anna Gret has also said socializing can be done by taking pups out in pup slings and buggies. That way the puppy is safe but can experience the world around them and those important first weeks. Completely agree. Exactly.
So that's something I did change actually, and that was inspired by Stevie. Although I taught Stevie most of what she knows, she did get herself a little pram, and she would take her little cottons around, I think, at 5 or 6 weeks in their little pram. And I must admit, I always took mine out in the van, and then I just that's one thing that I encourage people to do for socialization. Once you've got this lovely calm emotion in your crate, I take them down in my van, I give them little bones to the litter. They're there with their mum, who's quite chilled out in that environment. They all have some bones, and I open the doors at Tesco's, and they just watch the world go by. And I try and do that in a couple of different environments. But this time round, I did borrow Stevie's pram for the online course, because certainly both of those recommendations are in the course, along with some other ways of doing it as well. And so I borrowed Stevie's buggy for having pushing the pram down the road. And I must admit, I had to buy a sporty version though, but I have bought a sporty version, only inspired by a friend of mine as well. And I never really thought about this, but she takes her puppies out for an hour with the adult dogs and just pushes them in the pram. I've always been in there, well, I can't take them out with the adult dogs because it's over-exercising them, and it's too much stimulation for them. And I don't want my puppies running around with the adult dogs in case they're over-stretching where they're trying to kind of keep up. So I thought, what a great idea. I can actually take them out for the walk with the adult dogs, because they can have their little chew stick in their pram and they can fall asleep. And she does. I mean, mine that's 13 weeks old, she loves her pram. Sometimes if I get her out of the pram, she's like, "Oh, I'm out of my safe place." Ooh, when I was doing her early socialization, she's getting much better now. But yeah, she goes everywhere with me in the little pram.
Fantastic. And I just want to say as well, as a physio rehabber, keep hold of the pram, because both end of life, so you might have to use it again when they're older and they're struggling.
Yeah, for the oldies. In fact, I put a post up recently. I was up at the woods in Crowford, and I took it up the most amazing hill, and I put a little post going, "Oh my God, am I really going to do this with a pram?" And someone did put a little post up there with their oldie in the pram, and said they did it with their oldies as well. I did make sure before I bought the pram that my older dogs could fit in it, so they can, yeah.
Exactly. You do have to make sure it fits. But I will say I've got a cargo bike, and I take both the dogs out in it so I can go to new places. Because obviously I've got my 3-leg and my oldie, and so we just go off out on the cargo bike, and they fit really well together. They're so good.
Yeah, my pram attaches to a push bike, so I can take them out on the push bike. Yeah.
It's a good idea. So what else have we got here? We have got, oh God, everybody's commenting. This is wonderful. Lovely. So Wendy says, thank you for answering, though maybe a little diplomatic. Thoughts maybe a little bit diplomatic. I love the way Diane comes across and her values. Don't we all? A big up to you both, Donna and Diane, airing this right now. This needs sharing, and I will do on all our groups. People need educating more. Yay, so true. Hope the mainstream media picks this up and airs rather than what they are wanting to do. Yes, no, I agree. Thank you, Wendy, for saying that's very kind of you. And Steve says, don't be embarrassed to buy a puppy pram. Yeah, I completely agree, because people are actually saying things like that. But I think times are changing and people are getting much happier with it. And I always say the same, don't be embarrassed, because people will always say what they say. You just have to get on with life, don't you, and ignore them.
Steve and Sam have a little oldie that they push around in the pram. Good for you.
Yes, definitely. And yes, he says one of our best buys for both puppy stages, and if your senior dog needs a rest. Absolutely, completely agree. And Janice has very kindly said, Donna is amazing. Oh, thank you. Always nice to hear. So finally, I just want to ask Diane, because we are going to wrap this up now. Thank you so much for everybody for commenting. Really appreciate you all getting involved, and it's been an amazing conversation. Obviously, everybody has loved it. You've obviously had a lot of amazing information to share, Diane, and it's been really, really great learning for me too, because actually I've never had a puppy other than my nursing. I've never actually had a puppy. So what would your top tip be for anyone who is considering becoming a breeder? And I also want to know what your top tip would be for someone going to get a dog. But I have to say, I think that we know that that's just make sure they ask questions and that you ask questions.
My top tip is knowledge. Get the knowledge you need. That's where people go wrong. And a lot of people, in actual fact, a lot of my doggy friends and people involved in competitive sports have watched my online course, and they were like, wow, I've owned dogs for years and I've learned so much and I didn't expect to learn it. So I think, there's a lot of people out there that are basing their knowledge on old knowledge. Get yourself updated, watch some new material, keep learning, change is good.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this tip. So yes, I couldn't agree more. Knowledge. That is in so many walks of life. Certainly mine is definitely what my go-to is as well for my work, because I just think, and it's incredible as well. Learning's fun. So, enjoy it, embrace it. And there's so much of it now. So, and it's easy to access. So again, if you're wanting more knowledge, like I say, the links are in the comments below, and you'll find Di's courses, and you can go and find Di's Click to Heal and all sorts of things to get more information. Anna Gret has also said, what an amazing time we've had. Love it, and hopefully meet again, Di, soon, which is lovely. Thank you both for an amazing talk. And also Jan says, Di's course is exceptional. I'm one of those people. So there you go. Good reviews. Right, I am going to leave you all to it. Thank you so much again, Di. Everybody take care, and happy puppy and breeder love. Bye-bye.